Hello everyone and welcome back, it's Zakiziel here, and tonight I'll be reacting to 5-ish Minute Lore episode 21.5 The Phaeron by Old Man Reacts. As always, I highly recommend that you check out his channel if you haven't already and subscribe to him. He makes great content, and a link to the original video will be in the description box below. Also, I'm quite curious, actually, since titled The Phaeron, if this is going to be about his Necron friend who's been showing up in the videos for a while now. But without further ado, let us begin.
Return, or else the galaxy would be filled with nothing but cracked planets.
Ooh, is this going to take the form of bloopers?
And we're off for it.
Good. Reset the Voxcaster for transmission, but leave it offline for now.
Very well, Commissar.
I'm so glad you got that little issue fixed with your vocalizer. You have no idea how uncomfortable that was getting.
Yes, I am glad as well. I added a new program to block the intrusions.
A new program? Where'd you get it from?
From
Oh, no.
scam.com. It helps me to...
Phaeron?
Yep, that's kind of to be expected. This is like that whole thing with the tech priest. He's downloading software from the second millennium or so, and then getting a what is this trial expired error sort of thing going on.
Tech Priest Phaeron. Damn
We're
it.
sorry.
Of course
You
he
have
would go
reached
off
a
and
number
do
that has been
shit like
disconnected
this.
or
Of
is no longer
course
in
he would do
service.
something like
If you
this.
feel you
Of
have reached this
course, why
recording an
wouldn't
error,
he do
please check
something
the
like
number
that?
and try your call again.
Armin, what is it? I literally have no time for any bullshit today.
Oh, Ahriman of the Thousand Suns, the one responsible for the rubric. The Commissar has quite the colorful little contacts that show up, going from a Necron to then one of the Adeptus Sororita, then Trazin the Infinite himself showing up. Oh, not to mention when that one orc that showed up.
I'll have to get the tech priest down to the workshop and see if a factory reset will work.
I wanted to talk to you about something interesting I found out.
Uh-huh.
Yes, I've been wondering quite a bit how you're able to get away with talking about certain periods of time, officials, and even the Emperor himself.
Uh-huh.
Yes, all very interesting. I thought that, considering your corpse Emperor's Inquisition needs to put a bolt around through anyone with an original thought, you'd be long dead by now.
Uh-huh.
But then, I just happened upon something curious. Have you ever heard of a specific branch of the Inquisition called the Ordo...
Initiate Perturabo Protocol.
Wait, Perturabo Protocol? What is this?
Say another syllable. Say another syllable, I fucking dare you.
Oh, it's a trap, like the iron cage.
Sure, isn't it? You're a member.
Make my day, Armin. Say I'm anything other than a commissar and you won't believe what's happening, even while it's happening.
You were friendly.
I'm your friendly neighborhood what, Araman? Exactly. Stand down, Perturabo Protocol.
Oh, that must have been strong to incapacitate the likes of Armin. Because from what I've seen and heard at times, even getting hit with lightning from an Eldar warlock doesn't stop Space Marines necessarily.
So, Araman, my old tit, why did you come to see me today?
Play Battle Miss 40 million.
Sounds great. Let me drop off the tech priest and we'll get right to it. Now, If anyone wants to transmit, just hit this switch. This one right here. Just come on over and hit this switch.
Who are you talking to?
Don't worry about it. Let's go.
Yes, Battle Mace 40 million. The same thing that Major Kill's been making in Rule 34 of.
Hello. 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 Ah, the Commissar. An unexpected calling to have, but an agreeable one, largely. Hello there. I am the Phaeron of the Vormekta dynasty, Zavorhen Yaksha. I imagine that at least a third of you already having a conniption at those words.
Oh, wait. Oh, so he wasn't just any old Necron. He was a Phaeron, which, well, also what I mean by just any old Necron. And I am fully aware of that Necron warriors are, well, basically automatons. They don't really have much thought going on. And so what I mean when I say any old Necron is say a lord or an overlord. Was not expecting his Necron friend there to be the ruler of a dynasty.
And I imagine the rest of you have no clue what they mean. For reasons that shall become evident, I'm here to tell the story of my people and our purpose. High time, really, considering my role in the Commissar's Voxcasts, as well as the fact that I am the reason the Commissar does his job as well as he does. Far be it from me to disparage a fellow historian's knowledge, but it is from my libraries that he draws most of his sources. The story of my people's origin.
I wonder what the Commissar did to get a Necron Phaeron of all people to share access to their libraries with him, and also, it is something unexpected for Commissars in general to work with Necrons, and he's been doing this for a while now. Oh, but yeah, the plot thickens.
Shall be abridged, as it is far too lengthy and convoluted for most to comprehend.
Yes, especially, by the way, since it turning out that, oh, he's actually not really a normal Commissar, but he's a member of some Ordo of the Inquisition, which has not been named.
We were an average Necrontyr dynasty, situated roughly 500,000 light-years northeast of the galactic core. We, along with all our kind, became embroiled in the Secession Wars. We fought independently for the Silent King and in the interest of unification. We had always favored diplomacy over other methods of seizing power, and the Necrontyr remaining united would have served our interests far better than rampant balkanization, as you Imperials might put it. We suffered our fair share of victories and defeats, gains and setbacks. But, looking back, they seem to lack very much significance in the grand scheme of things. As the Silent King drove us all to war against the Old Ones, the Vormekta were among the few that opposed the decision. We wished for immortality as fervently as any Necrontyr, but declaring war against those who could in the future grant it to us seemed a counterintuitive decision. Nevertheless, we marched at the King's behest when we were called, doing what we could to lessen the burden of war on our own dynasty. When the tides and tapestry of history swept us up and along toward the rise of the Catan and the war in heaven, Our dynasty marched onward with little fanfare or...
Oh, side note, actually, while it would have been a good idea not to wage war on the old ones because they could have given the Necron tier immortality, it was also a case where the Necron tier, if I remember correctly, did ask them to be, either given immortality or at the very least have their degeneration due to the radiation of their sun fixed, that they could live normal lives, so to speak. And the old one said no.
trouble to speak of. I myself had only been born partway through the war against the Old Ones, and I had only ascended to the throne of Vormecta 3 years before the fires of biotransference came to us. However, as the biotransference stripped us of our flesh, we as a dynasty found ourselves lucid and conscious. Where most others had their memories and wills stolen entirely, the Vormecta retained our identities throughout our ranks for reasons we could not and do not understand. We were still enslaved, the command protocols of the Catan overriding our will in intermittent intervals. But all of us, from myself to the lowest of peasants, remembered who we were and what had happened to us.
That is surprising because, if I remember correctly, the Necron warriors, their bodies are much less sophisticated than those of the, say, Necron lords and their cryptex, which is partly responsible for the lowering of their sense of individuality. If I remember correctly, it's also because of how much of their souls got nommed by the Catan during biotransference.
And so for the entirety of the War in Heaven, we were driven into war under the Nightbringer against all of our wills. The only explanation as to why we retained our identities we have thus far come to boils down to the Catan playing a cruel joke on us, experimenting and seeing how unwilling conscious slaves suited them compared to insensate unconscious ones. Either way, when the Silent King finally launched his trap and freed us from the Nightbringer's control,
it being a cruel joke / experiment, this sounds like the sort of thing that the Deceiver would do.
we rose up with a vengeance and took our pound of flesh, so to speak. It was with a resigned acceptance that I ordered my people to sequester themselves to hibernation for the next 60 million years. There was little else to do, after all. Our capital tomb world of Nectar reawakened in what you might refer to as the 32nd millennium. And when we awoke, we found the surface of our world completely covered in the decrepit ruins of a long-dead civilization. Cities with mountain-sized complexes, highways and infrastructure that spanned across the breadth of our world like the veins in plants' leaves. There was hardly any portion of our planet that didn't at least have some littered evidence of this civilization, but there was no sign whatsoever of what people may have called these structures their home.
I wonder if those could have been structures from the Dark Age of technology, since, after humanity got cut off from each other during the Age of Strife, and then since you mentioned it being the 32nd millennium, that would be after the Horus Heresy took place. So it's entirely possible that it could have been one of the worlds that got virus bombed or something.
The story of an entire species, the beginning, the rises and falls, and the eventual end of an entire race of people, had come and gone while we had been asleep.
No.
The fuck?
Get back here, you clanking collection of junk!
They're all rather amusing.
Alright, to hell with it! System shutdown code word, Zanzibar!
Zanzibar. For anyone who's wondering why I find the choice of code word to be so funny, it's a little inside joke I remembered from my friends, and it's about Shadow Jesus, and everyone thinking he died in Zanzibar.
I take it the factory reset didn't go over well.
Apparently, the tech priest has saved at least 14 different editions of Lusty Armageddon Toaster he doesn't want to let go of.
The fuck is
Do you really want to know?
Lusty Armageddon Toaster. This also make me wonder if they checked that tech priest's, well, maintenance bay, I assume you'd call wherever they keep their belongings. Would they really be called quarters? I'm not entirely sure, but wherever that tech priest stays I wonder how many toasters they might find in there, hidden in places.
No, I think I'll pass.
And what exactly the fuck are you laughing at, Alman?
Right then. Before the fires of biotransference, I'd been tasked by my father, the former Phaeron, with researching and understanding the cultures and languages of the old ones. This was so because I'd always been a swift learner and had a curious spirit. This same proclivity of mine was used by the Nightbringer against the Kroaks and the Eldari. And so I awoke from my stasis tomb, and I traversed the desiccated husk of a long-dead people's greatest achievements and shames. And I was captivated. I had to know who these people were and where they had gone, and before me lay untouched evidence of their passage. As the centuries of my tomb world slowly awakening crawled onward, I spent the time examining every errant relic and artifact and ruin on the surface of Mekta. I learned much, but ultimately precious little by the time my people fully awoke. To my surprise, my people's memories and identity had long endured the millions of years of sleep, and as they began to wake, I saw fit to bring them news of the civilization that had been birthed and apparently perished upon our own soil. It wasn't long before all citizens of Mekta began playing the role of archaeologist. What else was there to do? The metallic prisons of our immortal shells left us with little option other than either going back to sleep or finding a way to occupy ourselves. And we'd been given one devil of a puzzle to solve right on our doorstep.
Mortality is a useful thing in the quest for knowledge, since the amount of knowledge that there is to be acquired tends to continue increasing, potentially much faster than it is possible to collect it.
Over the course of about 900 years, we had dissected and archived all of our findings on this dead civilization that had made our world its birthplace and grave. We learned much, but not nearly enough. This had become the only thing that my people had any investment in. We had to know everything. And so, I happened upon the idea of using the combined efforts of dozens of chronomancers to directly peer into the past, rather than simply sifting through the detritus. And through this, we learned everything we wished to know. The long-dead people who had lived on our world are a topic I shall leave unexplored for now. What is important is that by learning all we could of this dead people, I and the citizens of Mekta had gained a love of history and archaeology. And so, as the topic of mobilizing our people to action and reawakening the other tomb worlds and overlords of Vormekta became broached, it wouldn't be long before our newfound curiosity would be unleashed upon the stars. Coincidentally, on another planet in our own home star system, there was another alien civilization that had sprouted during the time that we had been asleep. Only this one
is going to be the Imperium
was still alive. This civilization, as you humans would refer to them, is comprised entirely of beastmen, more specifically Minotaur beastmen, although they refer to themselves as the Auroch. At the time that we awoke, the Auroch were roughly halfway through what one might call a medieval period in their development, and were just then coming to have a grasp of chemical and explosive weapons.
If I remember correctly, during actually no, not during what, before the Horus Heresy started, like when the Great Crusade was still going on, I heard that there were cases of beastmen type creatures that were found on various human worlds as a result of all the, warp storms and stuff that happened during the Age of Strife, and that they were initially actually treated relatively well, in the sense that they weren't classified as mutants, but more like abhumans, similar to the Ogrins, and that they were even fighting in the Imperial Army. Now, I have no idea if this is true, but that's what I've heard some people say. If that is the case, though, I would love to find out more about it in the comments.
This development, to me and to my people, came as something of a dream come true. Where before we'd only been able to sift through the remains of a dead people and take brief glimpses into their lives, we now had a living people to study and catalogue. And so we did. We committed at first to conducting a prolonged study for a set amount of time. For around 3 centuries, I and a small cohort of my colleagues personally lived among the Auroch and travelled the breadth of their lands 100-fold over. For 3 centuries I walked amongst these people, asked them of their written histories, explored their ruins and tombs, and observed their development firsthand. I and my colleagues hoped to be as little more than passive observers to their struggles and tribulations, although when our help was asked, we found it difficult to refuse many a time. I watched city-states rise and fall. I watched ethnic groups be wiped out by plague, war, displacement, and diaspora. I watched them make leaps and bounds through a dozen scientific fields, and I watched them achieve great things and commit great atrocities against each other. How like us they were when we were flesh. Finite, weak, fallible, striving, achieving, stumbling. So many victories and failures and comedies and inspirations. I am not ashamed to say that I fell in love with these people, with their spirit, their story, and their aspirations. The Auroch are a people of singular determination and fealty, yet also humility and hope. They are boisterous and bloodthirsty, but principled and calculating. By the time the 3 centuries of our study had come to an end, the Auroch were experiencing something of a renaissance, and knew of us as wise and elusive mystics to be respected and revered. And the citizens of Mekta, who had been paying attention for all that time, knew of them as many things. Neighbors, subjects, savages, comrades, children, friends. Oh, what now?
Oh, wow.
Why are you looking at me like that?
So lovely. Your coils are so... Oh my my.
Is the tech priest trying to hit on the Phaeron?
My,
Why are you in here at all?
you have a vocalizer.
Are you high?
The voice of the angels of beyond Messiah.
What?
Beautiful, chroming, glorious framing.
The fuck?
You are the most beautiful toaster I have ever seen.
The fucking what now?
I will write poems to you.
What more the hells is going into you now?
Hold you. Caress you.
Stay away from me. Only warning.
Lovely toaster.
No.
Do you have a name?
Unhand me, you lecherous crankshaft!
Oh, beautiful toaster.
No means no, you septic tank of nonsense.
Oh, lovely toaster.
Fuck off!
Prophecy is true.
Well, there he is.
Issues, I take it.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I guess the tranquilizer finally took hold, huh?
In a manner of speaking. How do you get anything done?
Patience.
This is reminding me of the time a friend and asked me to torment and some of their acquaintances in college by writing lewd fanfics involving toasters and polar bears.
Now where was I? There was one particular individual among the Owl Rock with whom I came to identify. A young warrior king by the name of Abraxas. I watched the breadth of his life and story from the very beginning. I was invited to attend his birth, in fact. He went from being an optimistic child to an idealistic young man to a jaded war hero and then to a fiery revolutionary, overthrowing his father's autocratic reign and leading his people in an exodus in protest of his father capitulating to a larger nation and essentially selling out his own people for personal safety. Abraxas founded his own city-state, instituted relatively sensible laws and forward-thinking policies, and valiantly defended his people when they were threatened by predatory neighbors. He held so fervently to his principles and to his beliefs that the sheer force of his convictions seemed to be enough to move the world to his will. But one day, he was assassinated, while bathing no less. He was betrayed by his own brother, a jealous little man who envied his siblings' greatness. And when that happened, I found it impossible to remain passive. I snatched Abraxas away at the very brink of death and healed his wounds as he was unconscious. When he awoke, he regarded me with guarded skepticism, and only asked whether it was true that I was a servant of the gods. There had been a legend going around that I and my people were angels. I told him that that wasn't the case, and that I had saved his life simply because I wanted to, because I could not tolerate such a pathetic end for him. All he said to me then was that I shouldn't meddle in the affairs of mere mortals for my own desire for a fulfilling narrative. I laughed and agreed with him, and sent him back to his people. Abraxas ultimately would have gone on to be a relatively minor historical figure, were it not for me. As he was lying...
I can imagine just how much it would have changed history if things had happened, like, say, after Julius Caesar was assassinated, if he just showed up the next day and was healed and perfectly fine. Or if Shaka Zulu, just after being murdered by his brothers, he was just perfectly fine the next day, just shows back up. Also, so I'm really enjoying this story, and I'm actually wondering, because some of you guys have mentioned in the stories with the commissar. I'm actually wondering if all of this is fan fiction, if it's entirely or partially fan fiction, either way, that it's still very good and fun to listen to. Also wondering if this is also, by any chance, based on any of the stuff, say, from old lore that I've heard about.
On his deathbed, his people safe and secure in their future, I visited him. It was there that I extended to him the offer to become immortal, to undergo biotransference as we had 60 million years ago. I think I may have damaged his impression of me overmuch by saving his life all those decades prior, as he insisted that there were hundreds more worthy of the honor, and that his story was fine enough ending where it was. I respected his decision. When Abraxas finally died at the age of 132, I was offered an attendance at the funeral, as, although he was soured by my saving him, his family and his people lauded me for it. As I stood, watching the funeral procession march through the city-state streets 5 times over, I felt so moved by the occasion, like nothing else ever had in my entire life and unlife. Perhaps it was the show of remembrance for a great and honorable man. Perhaps it was the knowledge that the whole of his story would end up being a footnote in a history book before long. Either way, I felt compelled to commemorate him in my own way. I and my people landed upon the Aurochs planet in force for the first time. We did so, calling for every leader of every major nation-state to meet with us. It was at this meeting that we made clear our true nature and offered the Auroch people a compact, an alliance if and or when they became capable of space travel, and an offer to grant any great enough individual the gift of biotransference, under the condition that once they underwent the procedure, they could only have limited contact with their people thereon, and a certain list of prerequisites to be met before one could qualify. It was named the Abraxas Accords. The Auroch leaders agreed to this. I ordered for all members of my court to adopt the colors of Abraxas's old heraldry, black, red, and gold, and I changed our dynasty's emblem to reflect the Auroch people's fierceness in accordance with this. The rest of my people...
I think that he was so moved by what he witnessed, observing these people, and especially the life of one great individual.
As fascinated with the Auroch as I was, went along with this rather easily. Whatever we had been before the war in heaven seemed to hardly matter anymore, and adopting the Auroch as our veritable mascots seemed as good a decision as any. And it wasn't long before a fair few Auroch Necron joined our ranks of historians and higher courts. Today, the Auroch have managed to attain faster-than-light travel almost entirely on their own. They often fight in Vormecta's armies now, and all who prove worthy and wish it join us in eternity. I believe our influence on them was a positive one. Our immortal observance encouraged in them a pragmatic, longer view of their own people, and the potential reward of immortality drove many, many of them to perform incredible feats in the pursuance of it. So, why am I telling you all of this? To be truthful, because I can, and because I now have the opportunity to do so in a convenient way where before it would have been difficult. I encountered the voxcast and rantings of the Commissar at total random and took an interest. Here was a person with a unique approach to history and an apparent enthusiasm for it. He was also in a position of relative power in your Imperium and was not opposed to dealing with outsiders.
Which is a very rare trait for anyone who is a Commissar or a member of the Inquisition. It's kind of weird with the Inquisition, actually, now I think about it, given that there are times when they'll make deals with even the orcs. But on principle, they're supposed to despise Xenos.
I recall being rather impressed with the accuracy and witty precision of his knowledge, and so I appeared before him one day with a proposal. I would allow him access to Vormecta's archives and limited use of our chronomancers, and in return, I would be allowed a hand in the production of these very broadcasts. And so, I speak to you now, whomever may be listening. We are the Vornectar, and I am their Phaeron. We seek to learn, to understand, to know, and to archive all knowledge, all histories, all cultures. Our legions of chronomancers have grown tremendously skilled and powerful over these last 8,000 years. The past, no matter how distant, is a matter of simple recollection to us. And your history, whether you realize it or not, has been witnessed and has been recorded. All of time, all of history, and all the cultures of the galaxy are part of one grand tapestry.
I wonder then if perhaps if any Necrontyr might have been observing Sylvania back in the old days. Being an immortal due to being a vampire has its perks, but memory, as everyone who has been watching these videos can tell, is not exactly perfect, and I very frequently forget things, or just get them wrong because I mix things up. That aside, it's a rather interesting prospect, actually. The idea of a group of people who have actually observed histories is from an outside view, and we're actually able to document it in its, well, more or less entirety, particularly because of the ability to quite literally peer back in time with their technology. Avoids the issue of history being written by the victors and the biases that come with that.
And it is a work of art that we are wholly dedicated to cataloguing, preserving, and keeping. This is Phaeron Zavorhen Yaksha, signing off.
That was definitely a treat to watch. Unexpected, actually, but definitely a treat. And I'm looking forward, but actually now even more, to more of these kind of things. Since I've been told by you guys, is that he's made it more these sorts of fanfics involving his commissar persona and the colorful characters surrounding him. And I hope you all enjoyed watching with me. And if you did, I'd appreciate if you like, comment, and subscribe. And that's all for tonight. This is Ezekiel signing off. Have a nice night.